Picture a castle. The oldest lived-in castle on Earth. 900 years of grey stone piled on a chalk hill above the Thames, towers you can see from 3 counties away, a flag the size of a bedsheet cracking in the wind. Now fill it with damp. Fill it with corridors where the draught slides under the doors like something alive, with state rooms too cold to sit in, with a king who owns every stone of the place and chooses to live in a plain brick house across the road instead, because even he cannot bear the chill. Add a German keeper of the robes who keeps pet frogs in her apartment and can make them croak on command by tapping her snuff box. Add a queen with 13 living children and 2 small graves. A queen who takes so much snuff that London calls her Snuffy Charlotte whenever it is sure she cannot hear. Add 40 pairs of silk stockings a week, 10,000 pins a month, and a bell on a wire that can pull a girl out of her bed at any hour of the night, every night, for the rest of her working life. That's Windsor in the 1780s, the most watched household in Europe, and it runs on cold hands and candle ends. A place where a girl could carry a queen's diamonds down a corridor at noon and eat her own supper standing up in a stone passage at 10. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists, shuffling past the round tower with our mouths open. We're going in at the servants' door, up the back stair, into the wardrobe rooms where the iron's never quite cool. 1 person, 3 years, everything she would have seen, smelled, heard, and survived. One thing before we go in, and because tonight's story is about diaries, it matters more than usual. The castle is real. The dates are real. Fanny Burney is real. The most famous novelist in England, the author of Evelina, appointed second keeper of the robes to Queen Charlotte in July of 1786, and the private journal she kept inside that court, pages never meant for anyone's eyes, is real too. It survives. You can read it today. When I quote it, I will tell you. But the girl whose eyes you'll borrow tonight, the young wardrobe maid working 2 rooms below Miss Burney, history never wrote her name down. Nobody recorded the girls who heated the irons and counted the pins. So she is stitched together from all of them, from wage books and inventories and the margins of other people's letters. Real rooms, real winters, real fear. Borrowed eyes, I will always tell you which is which. So, I make these history stories, and I honestly still can't decide whether anyone truly sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who enjoy hearing about pet frogs, black pins, and the officially approved method of strangling a sneeze in front of a king. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. The candle has perhaps 20 minutes left in it, and you are stealing every one of them. 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're already half dressed. Petticoat and stays, bare arms prickling in the cold, hunched at the corner of a work table you're not supposed to use writing. The ink is so cold it drags. You warm the little bottle in your fist between sentences the way you would warm an egg. Your pen is a goose quill trimmed down to a stub. Your book is a 6-penny memorandum book with a paper cover the colour of weak tea, and you're finishing yesterday's page before yesterday gets away from you. What the Queen wore, what Mrs. Schwellenberg said at cards, what the frogs did, what Miss Burney's face looked like when she thought nobody was watching it. You write it small, 2 days crammed onto a single leaf, because paper is dear, and this book has to last you the winter, and through the wall, thin lath and plaster 1 room along, you can hear it. Faint, dry, unmistakable. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. Miss Burney's pen. She is writing too. She writes every morning she can steal and half the nights, hundreds of pages a year, journal, letters, heaven knows what, and none of it, not one line of it, is meant to be read by anybody in this house. 2 diaries, 1 wall between them. Hers goes into a locked box. Yours goes into a place we will get to in a moment. You have never spoken to her about it. You never will. But on the bad mornings, and there will be worse mornings than you can yet imagine, that small dry scratching through the wall will be the sound that tells you that you are not the only one. That somewhere 1 room over, another pair of cold hands is doing the same forbidden, necessary thing, keeping the truth somewhere the household cannot inspect it. Paper remembers what the mouth must not say. That is the whole of it. That is why you are awake. The room smells of burnt tallow first. Your candle, the cheap kind, mutton fat, a smell like a kitchen the day after a roast. Under that, scorched starch, the ghost of yesterday's ironing, baked into the air so thoroughly that the room would smell of hot linen even empty. Under that, lavender, drifting from the great press where the Queen's body linen sleeps between washes. Under that, damp stone, which is not truly a smell, more a thing the air does at Windsor, a wet wool cold that works its way into bread, into blankets, into bone, and stays there from October to May. And underneath everything, you. Warm bed smell and old sweat, 3 days out from your last proper wash, because hot water in this palace is the Queen's. Welcome to Windsor. Michaelmas Week, September 1787. Behind you, in the narrow bed you climbed out of half an hour ago, Betty is still asleep, breathing like a kettle just before it sings. Betty works in the laundry. Her hands are pink to the elbow and smell of lye 7 days a week, and she sleeps the way only laundry maids sleep, like a dropped stone. Yes, you share a bed. That's normal. Nearly every servant in England shares a bed, and most of the country besides. A bed to yourself is a luxury nobody at your level can afford, and honestly, from November onward you are glad of her. 2 bodies keep a garret warm. At least Betty doesn't steal the blanket. Much. Your name is Anne. Anne Fletcher. If anyone in this house ever bothered with the second half, which they don't. You are 17 years old. You come from King's Lynn, on the cold edge of Norfolk, where your father salts herring and your mother buried 4 children and raised 5. And you arrived here 14 months ago, July of 1786, in the very same week that Miss Burney herself first came through the gates. Nobody remembers your arrival. All England seemed to know of hers. The newspapers wrote about it. The celebrated authoress, gone to court. Nobody writes about a herring curer's daughter with a tin trunk. In the trunk, 2 shifts, a Bible with your grandmother's name in it, a pair of patterns for wet cobbles, and a 6-penny memorandum book you bought on the quay at Lynn the morning the carrier's cart left. Because your mother said, "Write to me," and you knew you would never have money for postage. So you decided you would write to her anyway, every day, in a book that would never be sent. That is how it started. It has become something else since. It has become the place where you put everything this house makes you swallow. And when I say swallow, I need you to understand what that means in a royal household in 1787. This isn't a modern job where you might grumble at the end of a shift. Here you may not speak in the presence of royalty unless spoken to. You may not sit. You may not cough. We will come to the rules about coughing. They are real, and they are magnificent. You may not say that Mrs. Schwellenberg made a junior keeper of the robes sit in a draught until her eyes swelled, or that the Queen looked tired, or that a page was slapped, or that anything, ever, was other than perfectly well. A servant in this household sees everything and must have seen nothing. Your whole body becomes a held tongue. So the book. Every morning the book. Know what happens if the wrong person reads it. Not prison, nothing so dramatic. Something quieter, and for a girl like you, worse. Dismissal without a character. A character, a written reference, is the only passport a servant owns. Turned off from the Queen's own household with no character, and with a book full of the Queen's private hours, you would not find another place, not in Windsor, not in London, not anywhere the word could travel. You would find the road back to Norfolk on foot, in whatever weather happened to be occurring, and behind you the whisper would travel faster than you could walk. That girl kept a book. Your wages are £8 a year. The book in your hands, in the wrong hands, is worth exactly minus the rest of your life. You write in it anyway, every morning. You've thought about why, in the way you think about anything at 6 in the morning, slowly, in circles, and the nearest you can come is this: the days here disappear. They are eaten whole, by linen, by pins, by bells, and each one is so like the last that a month can vanish without leaving a mark on you. The book leaves a mark. The book proves that Tuesday existed. Somewhere under all the livery there is a person, and the person keeps minutes of her own life, never meant to be read, not even some day by you, perhaps. That isn't the point. Kept is the point. Outside, Windsor is waking up in layers, the way it always does. First the rooks, arguing in the elms, hundreds of them, a parliament of rooks down the long walk. 3 miles of trees planted a century ago in 1685 by order of Charles II, so that kings not yet born could ride home down an avenue. The rooks got more use out of it than the kings ever did. Then the chapel bell, striking 6 with that flat, wet, stone-softened sound Windsor bells have. Then boots, the foot guards changing sentries up at the castle, hobnails on cobble, a sound like slow hail. Then the pump handle in the yard, shrieking on its dry hinge as the scullery starts hauling the day's first water, bucket by bucket, because water does not come to anybody through pipes, not even here. The greatest kingdom on earth, and every drop of the king's shaving water walks upstairs in somebody's 2 hands. Here is the thing that surprises everyone, and it surprised you so much you gave it a whole page of the book in your first week. The royal family does not live in the castle. The castle looms over the town like the lid of the world, 9 centuries of it, and the king looks at it mostly from outside. The family lived in the Queen's Lodge, a long plain brick building across the way, fitted up for them in the 70s, at a cost people whisper came near £40,000, and still, at the end of all that money, a house where the wind comes under the doors and the servants sleep in garrets beneath the leads. The castle is for show and for chapel, the lodge is for living. Kings, it turns out, can also own a house too grand to be warm in. Your garret is at the top of the lodge, servant's side, your wardrobe room, the room you're sitting in now, the room where you will spend more of your one life than anywhere else on earth, is 2 floors down, close under the Queen's own apartments, so that clean linen never has far to travel. Everything in this house is arranged around that single idea. Distance here is measured in how far the Queen's things must be carried, and you are one of the things that carries them. The candle gutters. 16 minutes now, maybe less. You write faster. Yesterday's entry, so you understand the shape of your days. The Queen wore the dark blue tabby in the morning and changed before the evening. Lady Effingham sent word about Thursday. Mrs. Schwellenberg won at piquet twice, which everyone at her table had the good sense to permit. One of the frogs got out of its pan and was found under the fire screen, an event which produced more genuine emotion in that lady than the entire American war ever did. Miss Burney looked greyish, and said she was very well. 51 words, a whole Tuesday, pressed flat like a flower. You blot the page with the back of your wrist because you own no sand, close the book, and do the 4 seconds of work that keep you alive. The work basket sits at your feet where it always sits. Split willow, a lid, a pincushion tray across the top, the ordinary luggage of an ordinary needlewoman, so familiar to every eye in this house that no eye ever lands on it. Under the tray there is a pasteboard false bottom, and along one side, between the pasteboard and the brown holland lining, there is a slit just wider than a small book, its mouth held shut by 3 loose stitches you can pick open with a fingernail, and close again with the needle you keep threaded in the cushion. Book in, stitches closed, tray down, thimble set on top of the stitches, exactly where a thimble would sit anyway. 4 seconds. You have practiced it the way soldiers practice their drill, and for the same reason. The day you fumble, it will not announce itself in advance. Below you, 2 floors down, a door opens. A particular door with a particular grieving hinge, and then a tread on the back stair you would know in your sleep. Slow, even, like a woman walking uphill who has walked uphill all her life. Mrs. Moss, mistress of the wardrobe room, 30 years in royal service, the woman who owns your waking hours. Through the wall, the other pen scratches on. Miss Burney has a quarter of an hour more than you do. Rank has its privileges, and this is what they actually look like. 15 minutes of ink. You pinch out the candle, never blow. Blowing spatters the fat, and the stub, warm and soft as a fingertip, goes into the little tin box on the shelf with the other stubs. The stub is money. Remember that. In this story, candle ends are money, and before this story's over, that small tin box is going to matter more than you can possibly guess tonight. From the foot of the stair, not loud, never loud, comes the voice that starts every day of your life. Anne, the Queen is never kept waiting. You're 17 years old. You guard a Queen's linen, and you have just committed quietly before dawn the only crime you will ever commit. You wrote down the truth. Now you go to work. Getting dressed takes 4 minutes, and every item you put on says something about you to anyone in England who looks. The stuff gown, slate-coloured wool, says servant. The linen apron, boiled white, says upper servant. A scullery girl's apron is sacking. The cap says decent. The plaited border on the cap, which you sewed yourself by candle end over 3 evenings, says wardrobe, not kitchen. And that plaited border is your one piece of vanity, your flag, the single visible proof that you've climbed 1 rung up the longest ladder in the world. Appearances matter in this house. They matter more than food. Cold water from the basin, cold enough to make the bones of your face ache. Betty surfaces with the noise of a woman drowning in reverse, gropes for her own cap and says what she says every single morning. If the Queen wants her shift warmed, she can come and lie in this bed herself. One day, Betty's going to say that within range of the wrong door, and you will visit her in whatever ditch they leave her in. You tell her so. She grins with her eyes still shut. Down the back stair, 2 floors, 46 steps, your hand skimming the rope rail worn glossy by 80 years of servants' palms. And into the wardrobe room, where Mrs. Moss is already standing at the long table with a flat iron in her hand. testing its heat an inch from her cheek like a woman listening to a seashell. "You're late," she says without looking up. "You're not late. You are never late." She has said this every morning for 14 months, and you have learned that it is not an accusation. It is a philosophy. In Mrs. Moss's world, everyone is late, always, against the one clock that matters, which is the Queen's. The sentence is her way of winding you to the correct time. You've learned not to argue. You take down your apron sleeves from the peg, and the day begins. Let me show you the room, because you will live and grow old in rooms like this one, and history never bothers to describe them. 14 feet by 18, one window, north light, the good light, the light that doesn't lie about colour. The long deal table down the middle, scrubbed white, scarred at one end with 100 ghostly scorch shadows, where 3 generations of irons have stood. 2 fireplaces worth of heat funnelled into one small grate where the irons live. 3 flat irons and a box iron with its 2 heaters, so that one is always at the fire while another works. The great linen press against the north wall, 8 feet of oak, shelves papered and lavendered, where shifts and stockings and handkerchiefs wait in ranks like a paper army. The drawers of pins, and when I say pins, I need you to understand what pins mean in 1787. Everything at court is pinned. Gowns are pinned onto bodies, kerchiefs pinned, trains pinned, lappets pinned. A court is held together with steel points, thousands upon thousands of them, and they are bought by the pound, and they are counted because they are worth counting. There was a time not so long before when pins were dear enough that a husband gave his wife an allowance just for them. Pin money. That's already a phrase in 1787, and it was born in rooms like this one. You spend an hour a week doing nothing but retrieving, straightening and sorting pins, and Mrs. Moss can tell at a glance if the pin drawer has been let go to shame. And on the second shelf, in its own straw nest, the squat green glass bottle of lavender water, distilled last summer, bought from the still room by weight, and worth more than it has any right to be. 3 drops on the iron's cloth when the Queen's linen is pressed. Never 4. Scent is like rank, Mrs. Moss says. If you can tell it's there, there's too much of it. Look at that bottle. Green glass, a cork skirted with kid leather, maybe 2/3 full. You will be holding that bottle one terrible night in November of next year, in a corridor you're not supposed to stand in, and it will be the only useful thing your 2 hands can do for the most powerful woman in England. But that night is a long way off. This morning it is only lavender. Mrs. Moss herself, a wide, dry, upright woman somewhere past 50, hands like a ploughman's and fingertips like a surgeon's. She can lift a boiling hot pressing cloth barehanded and feel a single human hair trapped in a fold of muslin through 4 layers of linen. 30 years in service, girl and woman. She folded linen for the old king's court before this king was crowned. She speaks perhaps 200 words in a working day, and roughly 90 of them are the Queen is never kept waiting. You were afraid of her for your first month. You have since worked out that she is not cruel. She is a wall, and walls, you will learn, are what you shelter behind. At 7:30, the bell. Not a big bell. A small brass bell on a coiled wire above the door, connected by pulls and cranks through the walls to a tassel beside the Queen's bed. And when it swings, you can feel the whole house change its posture. Somewhere above you, Charlotte, by the grace of God, Queen of Great Britain, France and Ireland, has sat up in bed. And now begins the machinery that you are a cog in, the robing, the same vast quiet ceremony every morning of every year, and I want to walk you through it slowly, because nobody in that world thought it worth writing down in full, and it swallowed the lives of women like you whole. Understand the chain first. You do not dress the queen. You will almost never touch the queen. The queen is dressed by her wardrobe women and her keepers of the robes. What your hands prepare passes up a ladder of other hands. You warm and air the linen at the wardrobe fire and carry it up. The wardrobe woman receives it at the door. She hands it to Mrs. Thielke or to the keepers. Miss Burney or Mrs. Schwellenberg hands the queen her fan, her gloves, her snuff-box. 4 pairs of hands between you and the royal skin, and every pair knows its exact place in the chain, and no pair may skip a link. It is not madness, although it looks like it. It is the same reason a church has a rail before the altar. The person of the king and queen is the one holy thing this age has left, and the household is its priesthood, and you, Anne, are something like the girl who fills the fonts before dawn, invisible, necessary, unrecorded. So, the shift, warmed at your fire until it holds heat the way a bed does, carried up the back stair over your 2 forearms like something newly born. The stockings, silk for day, and you check each one against the window light for a sprung thread, because a ladder in a royal stocking is a wardrobe crime with your name on it. The stays, the pocket hoops, the petticoat, the gown, this morning the brown lute-string, because the Queen, whatever London may imagine, dresses plain at Windsor, plainer than half the merchants' wives in the town. The hair, dressed and powdered by other specialists entirely. And through all of it, the Queen stands or sits with a book open, or the newspapers reading, because she has done this every morning for 26 years, and her body no longer needs her attention to be dressed. She was 17 when they fetched her from Mecklenburg-Strelitz, a duchy smaller than an English county, put her on a ship in a September gale, and married her to a king she had never seen, in a language she did not yet speak, 6 hours after she arrived in London. 17. Your age exactly. You think about that more than you would admit to anyone. Numbers, because this is a story about a household, and households run on numbers. The Queen has borne 15 children in 21 years. Count it on your fingers some night as you have. Married in 1761, and then George, Frederick, William, Charlotte, Edward, Augusta, Elizabeth, Ernest, Augustus, Adolphus, Mary, Sophia, Octavius, Alfred, Amelia, the last born in 1783, 4 years ago, 13 of them living. Little Alfred died at not quite 2 in 1782, Octavius at 4 in 1783, and the king, they say, still cannot speak his name without stopping. 2 small graves and a linen list that never stops moving. Shifts let out and taken in, christening lace mended and folded away, mourning bands, growth, growth, growth. You know this family the way an archivist knows a kingdom, from the laundry marks. You can read the whole history of the House of Hanover in thread and hem, and no historian will ever once think to ask you. And the snuff-box. Always at the end of the robbing, the snuff-box, tortoise-shell and gold, handed last like a full stop. The Queen takes snuff the way other people breathe. It is her one extravagance and her oldest comfort. Strasbourg snuff kept moist and mixed to her own liking, and the fine brown dust of it gets into everything you wash, a rusty freckling along every right-hand cuff, and every handkerchief hem, and you have spent more hours of your life removing snuff stains from royal linen than you have spent in church. Snuffy Charlotte, the London wits call her. You call it Tuesday, but mark that snuff box too, small as it is. There will come a morning, a year from this one, when it is handed to her and set down untouched, and the sight of it sitting shut on the table will frighten you worse than shouting. While the chain works, Mrs. Schwellenberg presides. Juliana Elizabeth von Schwellenberg, first keeper of the robes, came over from Mecklenburg with the Queen in 1761, a stout, short-necked, gouty woman now, with a face like a fist, and English she's been proudly refusing to improve for 26 years. Within the household her word is weather. It simply happens to you, and you dress for it. She keeps those pet frogs in her parlour in a pan, and she loves them openly, extravagantly, as she loves nothing else in England, and she will tap her snuff-box lid and make them croak for visitors, and woe betide the visitor who does not marvel. You have decided, privately in the book, that the frogs are the only creatures at this court who are allowed to say what they think when she taps, and Miss Burney, Fanny Burney, second keeper of the robes, 35, small, near-sighted, quick, with a way of standing that tries to take up less room than her body actually needs. The most celebrated woman writer alive, Evelina Cecilia. Even you had heard of Evelina in Lynn, where exactly one circulating copy went round the town like a fever, and the king himself wanted her at court, and all England called it a triumph for her. You have watched her for 14 months, and you will tell the book, though you would never tell a living soul what you have concluded. It is not a triumph. It is a cage with £200 a year painted on the bars. She waits on the Queen at 7, at noon, at 11 at night. She has no hour that is safely her own, and she spends her evenings pinned opposite Mrs. Schwellenberg at the card table being corrected. £200 a year, while you have 8. 25 of you would fit inside her salary, and she is the unhappiest person you have ever watched at close range, which is a lesson about money that you did not expect to learn at court, and which you wrote in the book last spring in 11 words. They can pay you 25 girls' wages and still starve you, but she thanks you. That is the thing about Miss Burney that you would go through fire for. When you bring the linen up warm, when you find the glove she is sure she has lost, this famous woman says, "Thank you, child," and looks at you for one entire second as though you have a face. Nobody else above stairs has ever looked at you. The Queen's eye passes over you the way it passes over the fire irons, not unkindly, the way you'd look at anything that has always been exactly where it belongs. And when Miss Burney has gone up with the Queen's fan, you hear it begin again sometimes through the wall in her snatched quarter hours. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. The pen, the other book, the other girl in the cage keeping her minutes. Breakfast happens at 9, or whenever the robing lets you go. Bread, butter, and tea, taken standing at the end of the wardrobe table with your third of the loaf in one hand, because the pressing cannot wait, and Mrs. Moss holds that a chair before noon is a moral failing. Tea, mind you. Even you, even at £8 a year, get tea, sweepings and dust and twice brewed, but tea, which your grandmother would have crossed the street to stare at. The 18th century is like that. You can stand in a freezing garret owning 2 shifts, drinking the same leaf the Queen of England drinks, 4 floors down and 4 grades weaker. Now, the candle arithmetic, because I promised you the stubs matter, and in this house even light is a wage. Wax candles for the Queen's rooms, tallow for yours. And by ancient custom, a custom worth real silver. Candle ends belong to the servants. In great houses the stubs are a perquisite, gathered, weighed and sold back to the chandler or burned in the garrets. At some tables the ends of a single season are worth more than a maid's quarter wages. In this wardrobe Mrs. Moss keeps the tin, and the division is hers to make, and on Saturday she tips the week's ends out and shares them by seniority. So many to Mrs. Tilke's girls, so many to her, 4 to you. 4p a pound the chandler in Peascod Street gives, and there are girls in this house saving stub money toward a marriage chest, penny by penny, year by year. You burn yours, everyone. You sit at the table before dawn, and you burn your dowry an inch at a time to light a book that must never be read. You did the sum once, because this age does sums about everything. At 4p the pound, a page of your diary cost perhaps a farthing in melted light. Your whole book by spring will have cost you close to 3 shillings, a fortnight's wages, in candle ends alone. It is the most expensive thing you own, and it cannot be sold, shown, or confessed. There is no better definition of a treasure than that. Anne, Mrs. Moss from the press, not turning her head. The Thursday linen. Because at court even Thursday is a rank. Drawing-room days, when the Queen must go to St. James's in the full armour of state, hoops 6 feet across, the good lace, the jewels out of their iron closet. Those days are campaigns, planned like war. A plain Windsor Thursday is only drill. But the drill never ever stops, and this is the truth about your work that outsiders can never be made to feel. It is not hard the way harvest is hard. It is hard the way a held breath is hard. Stand, wait, press, wait, carry, wait. Be perfect, hourly, in 19 small ways, forever, and let no perfection ever be noticed, because in this trade being noticed and being ruined, arrive by the same door. By 10 the second post has come up from London, and Miss Planter looks in on her way from the princess's side. Margaret Planter, English teacher to the younger princesses, a thin, kind, tired woman the colour of weak coffee, who seems to live in doorways. She's never quite in a room and never quite out of it. She and Miss Burney trade a few low sentences by the window. You catch one in 4 words. The king has been hunting. The king has been asking the farmers about turnips again. The king walked so fast on the terrace that the equerries came home lame. The Windsor uniform of news. She leaves a small mending bundle. Princess Amelia, 4 years old, has been at her sampler again, with results, and is gone. Doorway to doorway like a draught with a face, and you stand at the long table with the iron singing under your hand, lavender in the cloth, snuff dust in the seams, the rooks quarrelling down 3 miles of another king's elms, and through the wall, in her stolen quarter hour, the other pen scratching on. This is your kingdom, 14 feet by 18. These are your wars, scorch, ladder, stain, and time, invisible enough, silent enough, careful enough. You will need to be all 3, longer than you know. Now let me give you the paper, the famous one, because I promised you the rules about sneezing, and this is the part of tonight's story where I can put a real document straight into your hands. It happens on a wet afternoon a few weeks later, October rain hosing the window, the ironing done early, and Miss Planter lingering for once fully inside the room, and Miss Burney in the rare, bright, dangerous mood that comes over her perhaps once a month, the mood in which for half an hour the novelist climbs out from inside the keeper of the robes. Miss Planter says something about the new maid of honour who coughed at the drawing-room, and Miss Burney glances at the door, glances at the window, and says, "Lo, I once wrote out directions for that, before ever I came here. for my sister, and she recites it, from memory, word perfect, the way you can only recite a thing you've laughed at too many times to count. This document is real. Fanny Burney truly wrote it, in a letter to her sister Esther, in December 1785, before she ever entered the Queen's service. A set of mock instructions for behaviour in the royal presence, and the page survives, and you can read it today. And what I give you now keeps as close to her own words as one voice reading aloud can come. Directions for coughing, sneezing, or moving before the King and Queen. In the first place, you must not cough. If you find a cough tickling in your throat, you must arrest it from making any sound. If you find yourself choking with the forbearance, you must choke, but not cough. In the second place, you must not sneeze. If you have a vehement cold, you must take no notice of it. If your nose membranes feel a great irritation, you must hold your breath. If a sneeze still insists upon making its way, you must oppose it by keeping your teeth grinding together. If the violence of the repulse breaks some blood vessel, you must break the blood vessel, but not sneeze. In the third place, you must not upon any account stir either hand or foot. If by chance a black pin runs into your head, you must not take it out. If the pain is very great, you must be sure to bear it without wincing. If it brings the tears into your eyes, you must not wipe them off. If they give you a tingling by running down your cheeks, you must look as if nothing was the matter. If the blood should gush from your head by means of the black pin, you must let it gush. If you are uneasy to think of making such a blurred appearance, you must be uneasy, but you must say nothing about it. If, however, the agony is very great, you may privately bite the inside of your cheek or of your lips for a little relief, taking care meanwhile to do it so cautiously as to make no apparent dent outwardly. And with that precaution, if you even gnaw a piece out, it will not be minded. Only be sure either to swallow it, or commit it to a corner of the inside of your mouth till they are gone, for you must not spit. Miss Planter laughs until she has to sit down. Sit in the wardrobe room in working hours, an event so unprecedented that it frightens all four of you into laughing harder. Betty, who has come up with the basket and caught the whole recital from the doorway, laughs the way laundry maids laugh from the boots upward, with her apron stuffed against her mouth. And you stand there with tears running into your smile, and here is what undoes you. It is all true. That is the joke. She has not exaggerated one word. You have watched a page of the back stairs stand at attention with a nosebleed. You have watched a maid of honour sway, white as her lappets, through the second hour of a drawing-room, because fainting is only permitted once the royal family has left the room. The funniest document you will ever hear in your life is simply an accurate procedures manual for your trade. You will copy what you can remember of it into the book that night, small in the margin, like a pressed nettle, and label it Miss B's Rules, all true. And notice, because you are learning to notice, what Miss Burney did before she began. Glanced at the door, glanced at the window, the most famous authoress in England, checking her horizon like a poacher before daring to be funny about her employers in front of two maids and a teacher. Then she stops as suddenly as she started, and her face folds itself back into its court shape, and she says, "Gather that muslin, child, before the damp gets it," and is gone along the corridor to wait upon the Queen. Through the wall that evening the pen scratches a long time. You will wonder for the rest of your life whether that afternoon went into her book too. It did. That is not the sort of thing I would invent. Her pages from those years are thick with exactly such stolen half-hours. 2 diaries, 1 wall. Both of you filing away the same laughter, in the same silence, for nobody. The next morning, Mrs. Moss sends you into the town. There's a bundle to go to St. Albans Street, flannel cut and hemmed in the wardrobe, and a jar of the Queen's Own preserved barberries for Mrs. Delaney. And an errand to Mrs. Delaney's house is the plum of your whole month, and every girl in the lodge knows it, and Mrs. Moss hands it to you with a face that says she knows perfectly well it is a kindness and will deny it under torture. You go out through the gate and along under the castle wall, pattens ringing on the wet cobbles, and even now, 14 months in, you cannot walk this street like a native. Your neck won't let you. The castle up there has been growing on its chalk hill for 700 years, begun by William the Conqueror himself around 1070, a wooden fort on a mound, and every century since has added stone to it like coral. The round tower on its earth motte, the grey curtain walls going on, and below the hill this small town pressed against the castle's skirts, like a child against its mother. Peascod Street with its chandlers and glovers, the market house, the guards' drums somewhere behind everything, and St. George's Chapel inside the walls, begun in 1475 by Edward IV, stone lace, and a roof of fan vaulting like a forest turned to frost, where the king goes to early service and where on the great days the Knights of the Garter hang their banners. You have been inside exactly twice, standing at the very back, and both times you forgot to breathe. Your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother could have stood on this same cobble and seen almost exactly this. That's how old this place is. That's how young you are. Mrs. Delaney's house sits in St. Albans Street, small and warm and bright, and it is the King's own gift. Understand who this is, because she is real, and she matters to how this story ends. Mary Delaney is 87 years old this autumn. She has outlived 2 husbands and every friend of her youth. She knew Swift. She knew Handel, knew them, poured their tea, and in her 70s, widowed and grieving, she invented an art nobody had ever seen before. Flowers cut from paper, not painted, cut. Hundreds of tiny slivers of coloured paper, layered petal on a black ground until a campion or a passion flower stands on the page so alive that botanists, real ones, Sir Joseph Banks himself, swore they could name every plant from her scissors alone. Nearly 1,000 of them she made in 10 years before her eyes failed her at 82. The King and Queen loved her, simply loved her, the way you love the one person who wants nothing. They gave her this house and £300 a year, and they walk in on her without ceremony, without announcement. The King carrying his own chair sometimes, and in her little parlour, and only there in all of England, they sit like a family visiting a grandmother. All of that is documented. All of that is true. The maid lets you into the hall, and because the flannel must be verified and the barberries acknowledged, you're brought to the parlour door, and there she is, tiny, straight-backed in black, white hair under a white hood, hands folded like a resting bird. And because she is Mrs. Delaney, and has never once in 87 years hurried a servant out of a room, she asks you your name, and asks after your mistress's rheumatism, and then, seeing where your eyes have gone despite every rule you own, she has the maid bring one of the great volumes and open it on the table. A flower, paper, 1,000 knife cuts of paper, bluebell blue, arranged on black, and it is not like a flower. It is a flower, caught the instant before it moves. Look close, child, she says. Her voice is small and clear like something wrung. Paper keeps what fingers cannot hold. She turns the leaf with 2 fingers, and you understand you're being shown a life. Every flower dated, every flower named, in a fine old hand along the bottom edge. Kept, all of it kept. Everyone in a great house, she says, should keep one thing that is theirs, only theirs. The house takes all the rest. And she looks at you for a moment longer than an old lady needs to look at a wardrobe girl, and you walk back up the hill with the empty basket and a heart going like a drum, half certain that the finest artist in England has just, somehow, blessed a 6-penny memorandum book she does not know exists. You are nearly at the gate when the man in the brown coat falls into step beside you. You've seen him twice before, drinking small beer outside the cross keys, always with a newspaper he isn't reading. Brown coat, good hat, soft hands. He names no name, they never do. He says, "You're one of the lodge girls. Wardrobe, isn't it?" And then, pleasantly, at the pace of a man discussing onions, "Half a guinea, my dear, for what the Queen wears at cards of an evening. What she says to the German woman. A guinea, a full guinea, look at me. If ever she and the king have words. Half a guinea is 3 weeks of your wages for a sentence. You need to understand that this trade is real. The London papers in the 1780s are at war for exactly this. Paragraphs from inside the households, the Morning Herald and the rest printing what the Queen wore, what was said at the card table, who was in and out of favour, and paragraphs are bought and somebody sells them, and that somebody is always a face like yours, and nobody with access 3 weeks' wages the richer. Everything inside those walls is somebody's money outside them. You look at his soft hands and you hear your mother's voice and Mrs. Moss's voice arrive at the same word from 2 counties apart, and you say, "I'm sure I don't know what you mean," which in servant means no, and he smiles like a man putting a coin back in his purse for later, and says, "You'll know where I drink." You walk through the gate with your face burning, not because you were tempted, but because of what it means. There is a market for the inside of your book, the very things you write by stolen candle, the frogs, the cards, the Queen's tired eyes. Men in brown coats are paying guineas for 100 yards from the wardrobe door. That is exactly, precisely why the lining of the basket stays stitched shut. You do not write the truth down to sell it. You write it down because it happened to you, and you are the only witness you can afford. Never meant to be read, least of all by the Morning Herald. That evening belongs, as every evening belongs, to Mrs. Schwellenberg. At 8 the card table is set in her parlour, and the equerries and Miss Burney take their places like soldiers told off for a forlorn hope, and you and the other juniors go up and down with the tea-board and the toast. The room is kept hot as a hayloft in August. She will have the fire built up whatever the season, on account of her health, of which she speaks the way admirals speak of the fleet. The frogs sit in their pan by the hearth, piquet is played, Mrs. Schwellenberg wins. The mechanism by which she always wins is invisible and unanimous, and you watch what you watch every night, Miss Burney opposite her being slowly ground. It is nothing you could report. That is the art of it. It is her pronunciation corrected by a woman who says verfaware after 26 years in England. It is the window seat denied, the hour extended, the tone a bad mistress uses on a girl she means to break, applied nightly to the most famous woman writer alive in front of gentlemen, none of whom can do a thing. You stand at the wall with the tea-board, being furniture. Furniture sees everything. And here is the entry you make that night, and it is the longest you have written all autumn, and I give it to you as the household really did whisper it, because Miss Burney's own journal records the whole affair. This summer past, travelling with Mrs. Schwellenberg in the royal party's coach, Miss Burney was made to sit with the glass down, the window open, mile after mile in the raw weather, because Mrs. Schwellenberg would have air, and the wind off the road struck her eyes until they were swelled and inflamed for days, and she sat with watering, aching eyes in the coach and said nothing, because a keeper of the robes may not quarrel. And when she was asked afterward if anything were amiss, she answered, of course she answered, that she was very well. That is what the open glass of a coach window can be, in the wrong hands, an instrument. Nobody shouted. Nobody struck anyone. The 18th century rarely needs to. It has draughts and rank and time. The frogs croak when she taps the box. That is their whole employment, to sound delighted on demand. You carry the tea things down the dark stair at 11, and through the wall, late, long after the house is quiet, you hear the pen. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. Filing the day when no one can inspect it. 2 books, 1 wall, and a man in a brown coat outside the gate paying guineas for pages. Sleep now, if you are in that bed. 10:30, Betty's warm shoulder. The rook's gone silent. 46 steps below you, a locked press full of a queen's tomorrows. The bell can ring at any hour. It doesn't tonight. Tonight everyone in the lodge sleeps, even the queen. Remember this autumn. It is the last whole year of the world you have just learned. Not for you, for all of them. But nobody in the house knows that, and there is mercy in that. And mercy, like candle ends, is worth saving. On fine evenings there is the terrace, and the terrace is the strangest public ceremony in England, and you would not believe me if the travellers' letters did not all describe it. The royal family walks out upon the castle terrace before sunset. The king, the queen, a crocodile of daughters in white, the equerries, the band of the guards playing, and anybody may come and watch. Anybody. Farmers in their Sunday coats, Eton boys, lace-makers, London families down on purpose, all pressed along the wall while the most powerful family on earth promenades up and down the gravel like swans in a public garden. The king stops and talks to anyone about anything, pigs, weather, turnips, a man's coat buttons, in that rapid Windsor way of his, what, hey, hey. And the crowd loves him for it with a plain, noisy family love that the newspapers in London always forget exists. You go when you can slip out, and you stand at the servants' end of the wall, and you watch your own daily linen walk past at 30 yards under the evening light. And it is the oddest feeling in your world. There is the shift you warmed at 7 this morning, wearing a queen, being adored. Get used to the sight of them like that. Whole, upright, bored, safe. In 14 months' time the whole country will be straining for one glimpse of exactly this, and not getting it. And men will stand on that wall in the November dark looking at lit windows, hoping to read a king's health in the moving of a candle. It is on a Sunday in late October, your one free afternoon in the month, that Mrs. Moss takes you up the round tower. She has some old right of friendship with one of the castle porters. Doors open for Mrs. Moss that would not open for a duchess, because 30 years of laundry outranks nearly everything. You climb the motte, and then the stair inside the tower, a stone corkscrew polished hollow by 600 years of boots. Your palm flat on the cold wall, breath burning, and then out, into the wind, onto the leads, at the top of Windsor. and the world is below you like a map of itself. 12 counties the porters claim on a clear day, and today is clear, rinsed blue by last night's rain. The Thames a ribbon of hammered pewter looping. Eton straight below, across the river, the chapel of the college like a stone ship at anchor among its playing fields. The long walk running dead south, 3 miles of elms drawn with a ruler, shrinking to a green thread. Smoke standing up from 1,000 chimneys. Windsor, Datchet, Clewer, villages you carry linen lists for without ever seeing, and beyond them fields, and beyond the fields more fields, stitched with hedges, on and on until England simply becomes air, somewhere out east, past the bend of the world, London, a quarter of the sky faintly brown with the breath of it, 700,000 people burning coal. You have never seen London. From here you can see its smoke. You are, you realise, higher than every person you have ever met. Mrs. Moss stands beside you with her bonnet strings snapping in the wind and looks out at all of it the way she looks at a delivery of new linen, measuring. And she says, and this is the most words you will ever get from her at one time, so keep them. I stood up here the week I first came into service. Porter's father brought me, as his son brought you. I was younger than you are, and I cried, because it was so big and I was so small, and I have thought about it since. She turns her head. The wind has her strings. Her cheeks are whipped red. She looks almost young. Everyone down there thinks the great world is the castle. I'll tell you what 30 years has taught me. The castle is only the world with better linen. Same wanting, same fearing, same waiting to be noticed, same dying. Pressed and starch, that's all. You're a small thing in a big place, girl. So is the Queen. Hers is just bigger and colder. She looks back out at the 12 counties. You're a cog, and you'll be told all your life that a cog is nothing. But mind this, the clock doesn't strike without you. You're here. You're in it. That's not nothing. Now fix your cap, we're going down. And on the landing at the bottom of the stair, gruff as a woman paying a debt, she puts something into your hand wrapped in flannel. Scissors. Steel scissors. Sheffield made. The length of your hand, with an S worn nearly smooth on the shank, her own from her own long-dead mistress, 30 years of edge kept true on a stone every quarter day. A wardrobe woman is only as good as her scissors, she says, already walking. Mind the edge, keep them by you, and don't thank me I can't abide it. You keep them by you. Take note of them. They're in your apron pocket with the flannel round them. You will use those scissors for 10,000 ordinary cuts, and then one night, one bad, hurried, candlelit November night a year from now, they're going to do 4 seconds of work that saves the whole of this story. Steel remembers, the grinders in Sheffield say. So will you. After that Sunday, the weeks begin to blur, and I will let them. This is a story about 3 years. Not every month gets a page. Winter comes down the valley like a lid. The frost draws ferns of ice inside the wardrobe window, and the irons become the most beloved objects in the lodge, and you learn the winter drill. The Queen's linen aired doubly, the flannel layers, chilblains on your knuckles cracking and weeping into the wash. In January the court goes up for the Queen's official birthday, celebrated in January, mind, though she was born in May, because a queen has 2 birthdays the way this house has 2 of everything. And the drawing room requires the great hoops, the silver tissue, the diamonds out of the iron closet, and the wardrobe works 4 days for one evening, and you see the whole armoured glory of it for 90 seconds, going down a corridor, and hear it come back at midnight smelling of 600 candles' smoke and other people's scent, snuff stains on the right cuff, wax on the hem, a long dribble, some careless sconce at St. James's. You know her year by what the linen brings home. That is the rhythm. Spring and the Thames floods the Datchet meadows, and the princess's summer muslins come up from London. Summer and the terrace every fine evening, and hay smell rolling in over the wall, and the king rides out at dawn to bother his farms. Farmer George, the prince call him, and mean it as mockery, and the farmers don't take it as mockery at all. You turn 18 with the seed cake Betty stole the makings of, and Mrs. Moss says nothing all day, and then at candle time, without looking up, 18, God help us all. The book fills. You buy a second book in the town, a shilling one this time, marbled covers, reckless, and sew a second slit in the basket lining, because an archive once begun does what archives do. It grows, and then it is April of 1788, and the first grief of this story arrives, quietly, in its proper order. Mrs. Delaney dies on the 15th of April, 1788, in her little house in St. Albans Street, in her 88th year. It is a real date. Write it in your mind's margin. There is no drama in it. A cold, a week in bed, a going out like a candle in still air, and the household learns of it the way households learn everything, up the back stairs first. The still-room maid has it from the Delaney's cook's girl before the equerries have it at breakfast. And you stand at the pressing table with an iron in your hand and find you cannot see the muslin for a moment, because you were 17 and nobody, and she asked your name, and turned a bluebell to the light for you as if you were company. The Queen grieves. You see it the only way you're ever allowed to see anything, in the linen, in the routine. The Queen wears her plainest things a full fortnight. The snuff-box works harder. The stains come down doubled. Miss Burney's grief is worse, and documented. Mrs. Delaney was her dearest friend in the world, the person who had brought her to court in the first place, and for days her step in the corridor sounds wrong, and through the wall at night the pen scratches long, long, long. What do you do for grief in a house where feeling is a breach of discipline? You do what you're learning this whole life long. You put it on paper where it is safe. Her flowers outlive her. Nearly 1,000 of them, dated and named, given to her family. The volumes will pass down the years like relics until they come to rest at last in the British Museum, where they still are. You can stand in London today and look at the same bluebell. Paper keeps what fingers cannot hold. She told you so herself with the whole of her life for evidence. In the book you rule a black line under the 15th of April, and you write, "The house takes all the rest. Keep one thing." There, and for the first time all year you're not entirely sure whether the hand that wrote it was yours or hers. Summer, 1788, tries to pretend the world is ordinary, and for 5 weeks the whole court decamps to Cheltenham, the 12th of July. The king and queen and 3 princesses and a scraped-thin travelling household rolling west, so that the king can drink the waters, because since June he's not been quite well. Bilious, the doctors say. A flurry in the bowels and spirits, they say. Nothing, they say. Cheltenham is a holiday in fancy dress. The lodge they take, Bays Hill, is so small that the household must be shed like ballast. Mrs. Schwellenberg, to the private guilty, enormous relief of every soul below stairs, stays behind, and you are among the few taken, because linen must travel wherever queens do. 5 weeks of a house too small for ceremony. You see the king at 6 in the morning in the passage in his plain coat, off to the well with his tumbler, and he says, "To you, to the wall, to England. Fine morning, hey?" And does not wait for the answer, because he has never once waited for an answer. And you write in the book, "The king is the only person in this family who talks to servants, and he talks to us exactly as he talks to the Archbishop of Canterbury. It is the closest to a family you will ever see them. Hold on to it." Because in October, back at Windsor and Kew, the weather inside the house begins to turn. It comes in small wrongnesses first, the way storms come to sailors. The 17th of October, a real date again. And from here to spring the dates are all real, and I will keep them honest for you. The king is seized in the night with pain and spasm, and the doctors are sent for, and the word bilious is used again, in the particular tone people use when a word has stopped fitting. The linen tells you before anyone tells you anything. The king's laundry goes wrong. Night after night of sheets soaked through with sweat, shirts changed twice, 3 times before morning. And the laundry talks to the wardrobe, it always has. Betty comes up with the baskets, and her face is not Betty's face. "He is not sleeping," she says. They hear him talking. Talking, talking, talking. Then the pace of him changes, and everyone sees that because he cannot be hidden. He's up at dawn, walking too fast for the equerries to keep with him. He talks now, not in bursts, but in floods, hoarse, hour upon hour, until his voice is a rasp, and still it will not stop. At chapel, at the concert, on the terrace, the words pour and pour. The 25th of October he appears at chapel, and the whole congregation of the household holds one breath together, because the man in the royal closet is moving wrong, like a clock with the pendulum gone. You watch Miss Burney these weeks the way sailors watch the glass. Her step is quick, and her answers are short, and through the wall the pen goes late, late, late into the nights, and her candle light lies in a blade under the shed, skirting until 2 in the morning. Her journal of these very weeks survives, remember. She was writing down, night by night, the same fear you were writing down. Hers you can read today in print, and the freight of it is simple. Something is coming, and no one will say its name. The Queen stops sleeping by inches. This you know the way you know everything, from beneath. Her candles burn later. The bell rings at strange hours. The morning linen comes down unslept in, smooth, where 8 hours of a living woman should have creased it. And there is no wardrobe science bleaker than pressing sheets that did not need pressing. Her face, glimpsed down the corridors, has gone somewhere private. The snuff box, one grey morning at the end of October, is handed to her and set down on the table, untouched, shut, and the click of it being set down is the loudest thing you hear that whole day. And it is in these very weeks, of course it is, that the man in the brown coat finds you again in Peascod Street, and his price has gone up. 5 guineas now. 5 guineas, my dear, for the King's Knights. Does he rave? Does he weep? Is he mad? The word is out in London. You know it will print with you or without you. 5 guineas is 7.5 months of your wages. He has soft hands and a kind voice, and he is the whole hungry outside world standing in a doorway, and what he is asking you to sell is the inside of the worst month of a family's life. The sicker the king, the higher the price. You walk past him as if he were weather, but your ears roar, and that night your hand shakes on the page, and you write, small, pressed hard into the paper. They are buying his mind by the ounce in London, and you understand fully, finally, not as a rule from Mrs. Moss, but in your own bones, why everything in this story that matters is stitched inside a lining. The truth is not safe anywhere else. Not in this year, not in this country, not about this house. You don't know it yet, but you have 3 days left of the old world. It is the first week of November, 1788. The rooks are loud, the frost is early, the irons are hot, and on the 5th of November, at dinner at Windsor, the storm that has been walking toward this family all autumn finally comes indoors. You're not in the dining room. Hold on to that, because it is the truth of this whole winter. You are never in the room. What the king said and did at that table on the evening of the 5th of November belongs to the people who are behind that door, and to another night's story told from the king's side of it. This story stays where you are, on the women's side, the wardrobe side, the corridor side. And on that side, here is how the 5th of November arrives. It arrives as a page 16 years old coming down the back stair too fast, with a face the colour of unbaked dough. It arrives as the dinner going up and not coming down, dishes standing in the serving room, going cold under their covers, nobody rung for, nobody daring to ask. It arrives as doors you have never heard shutting, the peculiar percussion of a house changing its mind about itself. And then it arrives as Miss Planter in the wardrobe doorway at 9 o'clock, doorway shaped as ever, but gripping the frame now with one hand, and she does not gossip, she reports, in a whisper meant for Mrs. Moss, but the room is 14 feet by 18, and you are furniture, and furniture hears. At dinner the king broke, talking, weeping, not himself, worse than not himself. The Prince of Wales is sent for, the doctors are sent for, the Queen. She stops on the word, starts again, and her voice goes down another step. The Queen is taken ill with terror, and will not have her women and the houses to be kept perfectly quiet, and nobody is to go to bed. Nobody is to go to bed. In 14 months you have learned this household down to its floor nails, and every rule of it points one direction. At 11 the house sleeps. The bell releases you, the candles go out on a schedule older than the king. Sleep is the one thing this machine makes reliably every night for everyone. And now, on the instruction of frightened men behind doors, the machine is stopped. You stand in the wardrobe at midnight with the irons cold for the first time in your service, and the whole lodge is awake around you in the dark, listening to itself, and you understand that you are inside the sentence that the man in the brown coat wanted to buy, and that no guinea on earth could make you say it aloud. That night the Queen is moved. Out of her own bedroom, away from the king's apartments, along to a distant dressing room where a bed is made up that nobody expects her to use. It is Miss Burney's own journal. You can read it today, that keeps the details of these nights. The Queen lying rigid and silent, the terror in the house so thick that the women speak in single words, the king's voice going on and on somewhere beyond the walls, hour after hour, hoarse, unstoppable, a river of talk with no banks left, until the words themselves stop being words at that distance and become only weather, a wind blowing inside the house. She wrote that she listened to it in the dark. So did every woman under that roof. So did you. This is your part of the 5th of November and the nights that follow, the part nobody recorded because nobody records the corridor. You are one of the candle line. The passages must be lit all night now. Men and messages moving at all hours. Doctors' boots on the stairs at 2, at 3, at 4. And the wax must be watched, trimmed, replaced. And so there is a girl at intervals down the long corridor like mileposts. each with her candle and her snuffers, standing still against the wall for hours in the almost dark. You draw the stretch nearest the Queen's side, because Mrs. Moss assigns the stations and Mrs. Moss trusts you, and trust, in this house, in this month, means standing where the listening is worst. And when I say listening, I need you to understand what a great house sounds like when the king inside it is losing his mind and no one may say so. It is not screaming, almost never screaming. It is smaller than that and far worse. It is the creak of a floor above you, where a queen is walking at 3 a.m, back and forth, 30 steps and turn, 30 steps and turn. It is a princess crying very quietly behind a door, royal or Augusta, you'll never know which, and you would die before you'd look. Crying the way people cry when they've been forbidden to, in single-held breaths like hiccups. It is the far-off river of the king's voice rising for a minute, and every servant in the corridor going stiller at once, candle flames standing straight up in the held air. It is a bell that does not ring for hours, and then rings, once, at 4:10, and the sound goes through the standing girls like a musket shot. Your body learns things in that corridor that it will keep for the rest of your life. To this day, her day I mean, whoever she was, all the her she is stitched from, there are old women in Norfolk who cannot hear a floorboard at night without their hearts going off at a gallop. On the second night, or the third, the nights have already begun to melt together and honesty keeps them melted. Miss Burney comes down the corridor with a shawl over her nightgown and her hair in its plain plait. No keeper of the robes about her at all, just a small near-sighted woman of 36 who's not slept, and she stops at your station. And she says quietly, "The lavender, child. Is there lavender below?" The green bottle, 2/3 full, kid-skirted cork, second shelf, straw nest. You're down the 46 steps and back up them in under 2 minutes, and you will remember the errand in your body forever. The stair absolutely black. Your one candle roaring in the speed wind of your own going, the cold of the wardrobe like entering water, the bottle's weight, heavier than glass should be, the way important things go heavy in the hand at night. You give it to Miss Burney at the dressing-room door. Through the gap, for 1 second, you see what you see. Candlelight, a small bed, the back of a woman sitting on the bed's edge, very straight, in a bedgown. Grey-brown hair down her back, thin and undressed, a shawl over her shoulders that you pressed yourself on Tuesday. Not a queen. A wife, sitting up in the middle of the night in a strange room listening to a voice through walls. The most powerful woman in England and the whole apparatus of her power, the hoops, the diamonds, the 4 pairs of hands, is folded away downstairs in the dark, useless as armour against rain. Miss Burney shakes 3 drops onto a handkerchief. 3, even now, even her. Scent is like rank, and lays it on the pillow, and the door closes, and you stand back at your wall. And through the door, after a while, you hear the Queen say something in German, very low, just a few words. You have no German. You never learn what they were. Some of the other women swore afterward that on these nights she was heard to say she saw nothing but a poor grey ruin ahead. But that is their remembering, told and retold down the years, and I promise to tell you which is which, so I give it to you as what it is. The corridor's version. What is documented is simpler and worse. She did not sleep. Night after night after night, the Queen of England lay awake in a borrowed room, and the house lay awake around her, and the only mercy anybody managed to hand through that door, the only thing that got past the doctors and the protocol and the terror, was 3 drops of last summer's lavender on a linen pillow slip. your lavender, your linen. It is the proudest and the saddest thing your hands have ever done, and it is not nothing. There is one more thing the corridor kept from those Windsor nights, and I will hand it to you the way the house handed it down, because it is in more than one memoir of that winter, though you did not see it with your borrowed eyes, that in the small hours of one of the worst nights, the king, escaping his attendants, came himself, candle in hand, to look at the queen, came into the room where she lay pretending sleep, and held the candle over her, and stood a long time looking, and spoke to her softly, and was got away again gently by the pages. The women told it to each other for years, some with one detail, some with another, true in its bones, blurred at its edges, like everything a corridor knows. I will always tell you which is which. That one I give you as the house gave it, whispered at dawn, with the candles burning down, because the candles never go out now. That is the small, stupid, domestic fact that your book will keep about the great Regency crisis of 1788, while Parliament and the pamphleteers keep their own, every passage lit all night every night, wax and tallow both, the chandlery bills swelling like the Thames in spring, and the ends, the stubs, the little soft warm fingertips of mortgaged light that were yours by custom on Saturdays vanish. All of them spoken for, remelted, reused. The household is burning its capital and scraping its savings, and the wardrobe tin stands empty week after week. It is the first time in 2 years you have nothing to write by, and you have nothing to write. That is the other truth, the one you will only understand looking back. Every hour is spent standing, listening, carrying. You come off the corridor at dawn, grey to the bone. Sleep 3 hours, iron, stand again. But it is more than tiredness, and you know it. Some weeks are too heavy for a sixpenny book. Some things the hand refuses on its own, without asking you. Between the 5th of November and the year's end, your diary, the shilling one, marbled covers half filled, takes exactly nothing. When this story is over, there will be 6 blank leaves in the middle of that book, and they will stay blank forever, and they will be the truest pages in it. Silence, kept, is also a record. Through the wall, in those same weeks, mark this: the other pen does not stop. Late, brief, some nights, just minutes of it, but on. Scratch, pause, scratch. Miss Burney wrote her way straight through the dark, and thank God she did, because nearly everything England now knows about those nights on the women's side of the doors comes down that one thin channel of stubborn ink. 2 books, 1 wall. One went dark and one burned on, and between them they tell you everything about what that November cost. On the 29th of November, they move the king to Kew. The reasons are doctors' reasons. Kew is private, walled, its garden shut to the world, a place where a king can be ill unseen. The house there is a summer house, unfitted for winter. Everybody knows it, and it does not matter. The decision is made, and where the king goes, the queen goes, and where the queen goes, the wardrobe goes. The order comes down on the 28th. Pack. 1 day. Pack a household in a day. And so comes the moment this whole story has been walking towards since the first stitch, and it comes, as you always knew it would, wearing the shape of ordinary discipline. Removals mean inventories. Inventories mean inspection. Word arrives in the wardrobe by mid-morning, in Mrs. Schwellenberg's own carrying growl from the stair, every box listed, every basket opened. Nothing is meant by it. Linen walks, in removals, It has walked for 300 years. Countesses' maids have hanged for it. The German woman is guarding her queen's shifts the only way she knows this month, by guarding something guardable. She's not hunting you. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with you. On the long table, third from the end, sits a split willow basket with a pincushion tray, and stitched inside its lining are 2 years of the truth. The frogs, the cards, the guineas offered in Peascod Street, the Queen's unslept sheets, the corridor, the lavender, all of it, in your hand, signed by nobody but readable by anybody, one slit lining away from a woman who opens things. You do it that night, in the last hour before the candles are claimed, at the corner of the table you're not supposed to use by the light of a stub Betty presses into your hand on the stair, her whole Saturday hoard given without one question, which is the entire character of Betty, and half of what friendship is below stairs, scissors out of the flannel, the S worn smooth against your thumb. You do not pick the stitches. There is no time and your hands are shaking. You cut. One clean 4-inch stroke down the seam shadow where a seam should be, the truest cut of your life, 30 years of Sheffield edge doing exactly what it was kept true for. And the books come out warm, the way paper is always somehow warm, and the lining lies flat and by morning rehemmed, the basket is the most honest basket in England. Let her open it. Let her tip it out and shake it. Pincushions, thread, a thimble where a thimble would be. The books travel to queue inside your stays, flat against your ribs, one either side, your whole archive riding your breath, and every jolt of the cart the paper creaks against your bones like something alive. It is 8 miles from Windsor to Kew. It is the longest journey of your life, and of the departure itself, this. They bring the king out to his coach on the afternoon of the 29th, and the people of Windsor are at their doors and along the street. His town, the town that has watched him walk its terrace and buy its gingerbread and talk its farmers deaf for 28 years. And there is a crowd all down the way, and the crowd makes no sound. That is documented, and I want you to sit with it, because England is a noisy country, and this is the quietest it will be in your lifetime. A whole town, out of doors, hats off in the cold, saying nothing at all, because there is nothing that can be said, and no one who dares to cheer. Only here and there, as the coach passes, a sound like the sea in Shingle. Hundreds of people, weeping quietly at once. You hear it from the second cart, pressed between Betty and a linen press, with a queen's household on your back and 2 forbidden books breathing against your ribs. The old world does not end with trumpets. It ends with wheels on a wet road, going away from Windsor in the dark. Kew in December is a house wearing summer clothes in the snow. It was never meant for this. It is a warm weather palace, a garden palace, low and rambling, built for June, thin walls, wide windows, passages that were charming in strawberry season and are now wind tunnels floored with stone. There are not carpets enough, nor curtains enough, nor anywhere near fires enough, and the household arrives in the dark like a shipwreck crew and starts surviving. Sandbags are laid along the bottoms of the doors against the draughts. Sandbags in a king's house, like a town expecting flood. And the passages are so cold that water freezes in the jugs on the windowsills, and you and Betty sleep in your clothes for a week until more bedding comes down from London. Somebody, it is remembered as the Queen's own order, has the names chalked on the bedroom doors because the house is a maze and full of strangers. Names in chalk, white on brown paint, down both sides of the long corridor, like a school or a barracks or a lodging house at a fair. the Queen of England's household filed in chalk. You pass Miss Burney's door 4 times a day, and the little chalked name does something to your chest every single time, and you could not say what. The king is lodged on the ground floor in rooms you never go near. The queen and the princesses live above, and the household packs in where it can, and between the 2 worlds, his floor and hers, runs the daily traffic of this strange winter. Doctors up and down, bulletins, questions, and the queen's questions above all, because she now governs her family's catastrophe from a cold upstairs room, seeing him rarely, told everything second-hand, waiting, which you now know is the hardest work there is. On the 5th of December, Dr. Willis comes. Francis Willis, a Lincolnshire clergyman doctor, 70-ish, keeper of a private madhouse, because that is the plain English of it, and this house has stopped having the strength for anything but plain English. A man who treats the broken-minded on his own farm and is said, whisper by whisper down the back stairs, to cure. He brings his son, and he brings his methods, and the methods are terrible and calm and of their century, and they too belong to the other story, the king's side story, behind the ground floor doors. What your side gets of Dr. Willis is his eye. He has a famous eye. Patients quailed under it. But what the women's floor learns is that the eye works upward too. He's the first man in 2 months who talks to the Queen's people as if the sky were not falling. It will pass, he says on the stairs, in that flat farmer's voice, to no one, to everyone. I have seen hundreds of these. It will pass, nobody believes him, everybody repeats him. That is what hope is, in December of 1788. A Lincolnshire accent on a cold staircase, contradicted by every bulletin, repeated like a psalm. The winter closes in, and the household learns to live the way garrisons live. And in the middle of it, 2 small things happen that you will keep forever. And since your book was dark that month, I will keep them for you now. The first is Mrs. Schwellenberg. Understand, Q has unhoused her too. Her hot parlour, her arrangements, her fixed and fortified life, all left at Windsor. Even the frogs travelled badly and sit torpid in their pan in the cold, beyond the reach of any snuff-box tapping, and she is old and gouty and further from Mecklenburg than ever. The nightly cards go on. Of course they go on. The table is her raft. But one evening in the deep of December, with the wind getting into the chimney and the candles bowing, she stops mid-deal, just stops, and says to the cards, in that battered English of hers, that she came over with the Queen in the year 61, when they were girls, on the ship, 9 days in the gales, and her mistress, her Königin, sang to the ladies to keep their courage up. Sang the whole way, 17 years old, to a country she'd never seen, to marry a man she'd never met. And then Mrs. Schwellenberg finishes the deal and wins as usual, and is as poisonous as usual by Thursday. But you were in the room with the tea-board, and you saw what you saw. Nearly 30 years of service stripped to its one plank. She is hateful, and she is loyal unto death. And this winter has taught you that both can live in one stout body, and the book, when it wakes again, will get 7 very careful words about it. She loves her. It excuses nothing. It explains everything. The second is the Queen's question, and this one, I must tell you honestly, nobody wrote down. It is a borrowed eyes moment, made of the kind of thing those winters were made of. Take it as such. It is a January morning, iron grey, and you are carrying up the warmed linen, the chain shortened now, Q fashion, fewer hands, thinner ceremony. and at the door the wardrobe woman is elsewhere, and it is Miss Burney who takes the pile, and beyond her, closer than you have ever been, the Queen stands at the window in her plain gown looking out at the frozen garden. And without turning, in that low voice with its soft German edges, she says, "It is the same girl, I think, with the linen all this winter. What is she called?" And Miss Burney says, "Anne, ma'am." And the Queen says, still to the window, to the frost, to the garden where her husband walks with his doctors, "The linen is always warm. Tell her. That is all." You back out of the door, you are never fully through, and you stand on the landing with your heart making a fool of itself, and you think, you, £8 a year, chalk name on a garret door. The Queen of England knows that her linen comes warm. In 2 years of diamonds and hoops and 4 pairs of hands, it is the only time the machine has looked back down the chain and seen a person at the bottom of it. Tell her. Miss Burney does tell you that evening, with a tired half smile that says she knows exactly what such crumbs weigh, and how far below stairs they travel. The crumb lasts you the winter. Some kingdoms are 14 feet by 18. Some coronations are 4 words at a window. Then February, and the strangest, brightest, most retold morning of the whole dark season, and it reaches you, as everything reaches you, as news, breathless, at a door. The 2nd of February, 1789. Understand the standing rule first. The King, walking now in Kew Gardens with the Willises for his health, must have the gardens empty. When he is out, the household keeps in. It is law absolute, because encounters cannot be risked. And on this particular morning, Miss Burney, told the King would walk elsewhere, takes her exercise round Kew's little lake, and coming up a path meets what she's been promised she could not meet, the King. Loose on the gravel, attendants strung out behind. She runs. It is against every rule of courts even to walk fast in a king's sight, and Fanny Burney, 36 years old, second keeper of the robes, picks up her skirts and runs from the King of England down a garden path. And the King runs after her, calling her name, and the Willis men running after him, calling to her to stop because running is the one thing his poor strained heart must not do. And so, on a cold path at Kew, in the middle of the gravest constitutional crisis of the age, the entire situation is resolved into a foot chase. The novelist flying, the King pursuing, the mad doctors pursuing the King, all of it in dead earnest, and she knew it even then, she says so. Pure comedy at the same time, the way the very worst months always keep one scene of farce in their pocket. She stops. They persuade her, and she turns and faces what she's been dreading for 3 months, alone on a path. The King, up close, altered, thin, his voice hoarse, and he does not rave. He puts his hands on her shoulders and kisses her cheek, and says, "Why did you run away from me?" And then he talks. Half an hour walking, talks of her father, of her coming to court, talks of Mrs. Delaney, their dead-shared darling, gently, sanely missing her. Tells Miss Burney, in effect, "I am your friend. Don't be oppressed." And every sentence lands nearer the man everyone has been mourning while he still lived. All of this is real, and all of it is hers. She went straight home and wrote it, at length, that same raw morning, in the private journal that was never meant for anyone, and it is one of the most famous passages she ever set down. When you read it today, and you can still hear how hard her heart was going. The wardrobe gets it at second hand within the hour, which is to say you get it. Miss Planter first, doorway-shaped, 2 sentences and gone. Then Miss Burney herself, come for dry stockings because hers are wet through from the gravel and the fright, and she is white and shaking and laughing, all three, truly all three at once, and she says to Mrs. Moss, to the irons, to the room, he kissed my cheek, he spoke of Mrs. Delaney, he is in there still, underneath it all, he is in there. And the sentence goes down through the house like heat through a cold hand. He is in there still. After that morning, the whole tone of Kew changes. The bulletins have been inching brighter for weeks. Now the backstairs believes them. Through February you watch the mending the way you once watched the breaking, in linen, in hours, in sounds. The King's Laundry comes calm again. Sheets slept in, plainly, humanly slept in, and you never thought a crease could look like grace. The Queen's candles go out at night. The bell rings at its old times. There is music one evening, small and far off, and the whole household stops to listen the way you'd watch a sunrise. On the 17th the King and Queen walked together in the garden. Together, the two of them, watched by every window in the house, and pretended unwatched by all of them. And on the 26th of February, 1789, the bulletin on the gate says it in doctor's English, dry as sand, and read aloud down every corridor in the land, an entire cessation of His Majesty's illness. The words go to London by express, and London goes gently mad. The 10th of March is the official Thanksgiving of the town, the illuminations, and I want you to see this with the candle arithmetic still in your bones. All winter this story has counted light by the stub, by the farthing, by the empty Saturday tin. Now, on one March night, England opens the whole purse, every window lit, London first, and Kew and Richmond with it, and Windsor, you may be sure, candles in their dozen set in every pane, rich and poor, transparencies glowing, God save the King in lamps and coloured glass on house after house after house, the whole black length of the Thames Valley picked out in fire like a constellation fallen the right way up. The Queen takes the princesses privately up to town to see it, and the story the household brings home, documented this, is that she had her own surprise made ready at Kew besides. Lights and a crown of lamps, a thanksgiving in fire for one restored man. You stand out in the cold with Betty and the new undermaids and look at a world with every window burning, and you do the sum because you cannot help it. You will be doing wardrobe sums in your coffin. One night of this would fill the stub tin for 100 years. For one night, nobody in England is saving candle ends, and you find you are crying, and so is Betty, and neither of you says one word about it, and your chilblains sting in the cold, and it is the finest night out you have ever had, standing in a frozen lane, looking at other people's windows. That night, for the first time since the 4th of November, you open the marbled book past the 6 blank leaves, and you dip the pen, and you sit a long moment with your hand over the white page, and then you write the date, and under it, alone on the line, 5 words. They lit all the candles. Through the wall, a Kew wall now, thinner, meaner, but a wall with the same 2 women either side of it. The other pen is going too, long into the night. It has a great deal to catch up. So will England. Between your 5 words and her 50 pages, the women's side of that whole winter has just been saved. 1 copy for the world, 1 copy for nobody. Both were needed. Both are why I can tell you any of this at all. Windsor takes its family back in the middle of March, and the road home is nothing like the road out. Where the 29th of November was silence and weeping, the 14th of March is bells. every tower between Kew and Windsor ringing itself hoarse, and people running out of houses at the sound of wheels the whole way, and at Windsor the town waiting in its Sunday best, and the Eton boys turned out cheering on the wall, and gingerbread and flags and the guards band, and the king leaning from the coach window with his hat off, thinner, older, greyer. The women's word travels down the household within days. Her hair! Look what this winter did to her hair! But upright, present himself, saying his what's to men he has known 30 years, who are, numbers of them, openly crying into their hats. The lodge lights its fires. The irons go back to their grate as if nothing has happened. The frogs revive in the parlour warmth and croak for the snuff-box like patriots. Even the rooks sound pleased, and rooks are never pleased. And the wardrobe plunges headlong into the great public full stop of the whole affair, because a king restored must thank God for it in front of the world, and the date is set. The 23rd of April, St. George's Day, 1789, a state thanksgiving at St. Paul's Cathedral, the King and Queen, and both Houses of Parliament in procession through the City of London. For you it arrives as what every historic occasion always is below stairs: linen, lists, and no sleep. The Windsor uniform for the King, for the Queen and Princesses the great dress, the real armour, gone over stitch by stitch. And you are among the hands that go up to town with the boxes, which is how a herring curer's daughter comes to see London at last, from a cart at dawn, through streets already filling like a mill race. And when I say filling, I need you to understand what the 23rd of April 1789 looked like in the City of London. The papers guessed at the crowds and gave up. Scaffolding seats at windows let for fortunes, roofs black with people, every balcony, every ledge, every signboard bearing its cluster of human beings like swarming bees. You see the procession, because Mrs. Moss, who has friends everywhere linen is washed, gets her girls squeezed into a mercer's upper window in Ludgate Street, packed 4 to a sill with the mercer's own household, borrowed eyes at a borrowed window, and I tell you so plainly, but the day itself, every fact of it, is nailed down real. The coaches come up Ludgate Hill at walking pace, hours of them, the whole state of England unrolled, heralds, judges, speaker, lords, and then the roar arriving before the coach like weather, rolling up the hill window by window, a sound you feel in the sill under your hands. And there they are, close enough to hit with a thrown rose, and half of Ludgate Street is throwing them. The King in the blue Windsor coat, bowing side to side, the Queen beside him. You have dressed that woman's days for nearly 3 years, and you have never once seen her face wear what it wears now, going up Ludgate Hill through a city screaming its love, nothing at all held back. Inside the cathedral, you have this from the accounts, as all Windsor had it by Friday: 6,000 charity school children, banked in tears under the dome, stand and sing, and hardened members of both houses weep without shame. The King is heard to say it was the finest sight he ever saw. The Queen keeps the day, they say, ever after among her dearest. You keep it too, your way. That night, back among the boxes by the stub of a London candle, the marbled book gets its longest entry since the world broke. The roar coming up the hill, the roses, 6,000 children singing under a dome you never entered, the Queen's undefended face. And at the bottom, because 2 years at court have taught you exactly how the machine works and exactly what it costs, you add 1 line in your smallest hand. All winter nobody was allowed to see. Today everybody was ordered to. You are 19 years old, and you understand public and private better than most ministers of the crown, because you have spent 2 years stitching the seam between them. Spring folds into itself, and the household breathes out, and the season hands you one more parting, the gentle kind this time. Betty is leaving. It has been coming since Christmas. A glover's man in Peascod Street, a steady fellow with red wrists who has walked her from church 12 Sundays running. And in May she marries him, out of the laundry and into a shop with her name over the door in her husband's letters. A laundry maid ends every tale she is ever given. Her hands. Hers now will keep other people's gloves instead of a queen's sheets, and be warm doing it. The night before she goes, the two of you sit up on the old bed like the first night, and Betty, who watched a kingdom shake from the soap end of it, and never once said anything wiser than she could help, looks round the garret and says, "Well, we heard history through a wall, didn't we?" Which is as good a summary of the servant class in 1789 as any book will ever manage. She cries, you cry, she leaves you her Saturday tin with 4 stubs in it, and at the door she says what departing servants have said down all the centuries. It's only down the hill. It is. It is also over. Both are true, and you have learned this year that both being true is what most of life is made of. The new girl come up from the town that same week, 15, scrubbed, terrified, from a dairy farm out past Clewar, and she stands in the wardrobe doorway holding her bundle exactly the way you once held yours, looking at the presses and the irons and the pin drawers as if they might bite. And Mrs. Moss says, "You're late," to a girl who is half an hour early, and over the child's head her eye catches yours for a fraction of a second, and something passes between you that is almost, not quite, entirely unlike a smile. The machine handing itself on. You show the girl the drill, never blow out a candle, pinch it. 3 drops of lavender, never 4. How to hold her tongue with her whole body. She scorches a pressing cloth in her first week and weeps as if the world has ended, and you hear your own voice say, from a great and kindly distance, "It gets easier, and it is true, and it is a lie, and it is what the girl needs, which makes it the most wardrobe sentence there is. She sleeps in Betty's place. She doesn't snore. You'd give a week's stubs if she did. And then, at midsummer, the doctors prescribe the sea. The king is well, but well the way a mended plate is well. He needs air, salt, distance, rest. The word comes down in June, the seaside, Weymouth, in Dorset, where his brother Gloucester keeps a house on the front, and the household is to travel, and this time the packing has holiday in it, actual holiday. The first this family has known in more than a year. On the 25th of June, 1789, the little procession rolls out of Windsor, through the New Forest by Lyndhurst, resting there some days in the old hunting lodge among the oaks. And it is on this road that England shows the household what the winter meant to the country. Because they line the road, all of it, at every village, every turnpike, every field gate from Windsor to the sea, the people are out. Farmers, weavers, children on shoulders, old women in church bonnets, and they cheer, and they weep, and above all, everywhere, unasked, unorganized, in tune and out of it, they sing. One song, the same song, village after village, county after county, God save the King. It is Miss Burney's own journal, she's in the party, writing it as it happens, that sets it down for the ages. The whole road one long chorus, the singing running alongside the coaches for miles, breaking out ahead of them at every halt, until the phrase stops being a tune at all, and becomes the sound the country makes. In the New Forest, by ancient custom, they meet the king with a ceremony older than the Hanovers, older than the Stuarts, and at Salisbury, and at Blandford, and at Dorchester, bells, flowers, and always, always the song. You ride in the second cart with the linen and the new girl, who has never been 10 miles from Clewer in her life, and has gone entirely silent with the size of the world, and you find that the song, the 500th time, does not wear out. It does something to the back of your neck every village all the way to the coast, and late on the last day the road lifts over a chalk shoulder, and there it is, the sea, Weymouth Bay, wide open, blue-white and glittering to the edge of everything, the great sweep of sand, the little town curled round its harbour with its face to the water. You grew up on the cold North Sea, grey as dishwater and smelling of herring and tar. You had no idea the sea came in this colour. The new girl actually stands up in the cart. Nobody tells her to sit down. Half the household is doing the same thing with their eyes. Weymouth has been waiting weeks for this. There are crowns and mottos on the bathing machines. There are royal legends chalked and painted on half the houses of the front. The whole town smells of paint, fish, and jubilation. And the summer that is coming, the last easy summer, though no one on that shining road could tell you so, is going to give this story the gentlest ending any story of this house ever gets. The household settles into Gloucester Lodge on the Esplanade, and the wardrobe sets up in a sea-lit back room, where the linen dries in half the windsor time, and everything you press smells faintly, wonderfully of salt. The routine reassembles itself. It always does. The bell, the robbing, the chain of hands, but looser here, sun-warmed, half its buckles undone. The Queen walks on the sands, walks, in stout shoes, with her daughters, in wind that pulls at everyone's hats entirely without regard for rank, and one morning you watch from the Esplanade as she stops, taps the tortoise-shell box and takes her pinch in the open sea air, and the wind snatches half of it off her fingers and flings it at Dorset, and the Queen of England laughs, out loud. You have served her linen for 3 years, and you have never once heard the sound before. It is a good sound. It is worth the whole road from Windsor. And then there is the morning of the King's first dip, and here I will simply stand aside because Miss Burney is on the spot with her pen, and what she records that week, you can read it today, it survives with all the rest, is the sweetest documented absurdity of the entire 18th century. The King goes down to bathe in the proper Weymouth style. The horse-drawn bathing machine trundled out into the surf, the royal person descending its steps into the sea in his flannel gown, attended by the dippers, the brawny professional bathing women of the town who for this season have God Save the King worked in bands round their bonnets and their waists. And no sooner has the King got under the water, I keep close to her very words here, than a machine alongside, packed full of fiddlers hidden for the purpose, strikes up God Save the King, the whole band of them soaring away in a wooden box in the English Channel, so that His Majesty of Great Britain, France and Ireland bobs up from his first plunge to find himself serenaded by his own anthem, played from a neighbouring bathing machine by musicians concealed inside it for exactly this moment. The dippers beam. The crowd on the sands cheers. The King, by every account, takes it with perfect delight, hey-haying at the waves. Miss Burney wrote it down that same week with her eyebrows practically audible, and 2.5 centuries have not stopped smiling at it since. And if you want one image to keep of what England felt about this man in the summer of 1789, after the corridor, after the chalked doors, after the silent weeping town, let it be this one. fiddlers in a bathing machine up to their axles in the sea, playing the national anthem at a wet, happy, mended king. That evening the wardrobe room at Gloucester Lodge is warm and slack with the day, and Miss Planter is in the doorway, and Mrs. Moss is folding at the table, and it is Miss Planter, you would have wagered anything it would be Miss Planter, who says slyly, "Miss Burney, the directions for coughin' sneezin', I beg you." And Miss Burney glances at the door out of pure ancient habit, and then doesn't care, actually visibly doesn't care for the first time in 3 years, and gives it again the whole liturgy. You must not cough. If you find yourself choking with the forbearance, you must choke, but not cough. If a sneeze insists, you must oppose it. If the black pin runs into your head, you must let it gush. You may privately bite the inside of your cheek, taking care to make no apparent dent outwardly. And the room laughs, but listen to what the laughter is now. 2 winters ago it was conspiracy. 4 people daring a joke against the bars of a cage. Tonight it is something else. Veterans, laughing at the regulations of a war they have somehow all survived. The new girl laughs without fully understanding, the way the young always inherit jokes before their meanings. Same words, same voices, one wall of grief between then and now, and the sound has changed colour completely. That is what time does to a joke, and what a joke does to time, and there is no better measure of this whole story than those 2 performances of one small wicked document, told 20 months apart. Late that night you sit by the window of your attic room with the sea shushing at the whole dark town, and you fill in the day, the fiddlers, the snuff on the wind, the laughing, and then you do the thing you have been circling since March. You turn back, for the first time deliberately, to the 6 blank leaves in the middle of the marbled book. November, December, the corridor, the candle line, the lavender, the wheels in the dark. Your thumb rests on the empty paper, and the pen is full, and the summer is warm, and you could do it now. You remember everything. You will always remember everything, and you close the gap and leave it white. Every archive keeps 2 records, what is written and what would not come. Let the blank leaves say what they say. Some pages are not meant to be read even by the hand that couldn't write them. Through the wall, one more wall, the last of this story's walls, sea damp plaster with moonlight on it. The scratching goes on, unhurried now, almost peaceful. 2 books still, 1 wall still. You blow the candle. No. You pinch it, of course. You will pinch candles till you die, and put the warm stub in Betty's old tin, and sleep before the smoke has finished rising. Now let me tell you how the true things ended, because you have earned the truth by name, and the rule of this channel is that the documented and the imagined are never allowed to blur. Fanny Burney endured the cage 2 years more. Her health broke under the standing and the hours and Mrs. Schwellenberg's parlour, and in July of 1791 the Queen, kindly in the end, let her go with a pension of £100 a year. At 41 she married a penniless French émigré general, Alexandre d'Arblay, for love, in 1793, and was happy, properly, provenly happy, and wrote more books, and outlived nearly everyone in this story, dying in 1840, in her 88th year. And then the thing this whole Knight's Tale has been pointing at. After her death, her family began to publish the journals. 7 volumes, from 1842, the court years entire, and the world discovered that the little silent lady at the Queen's elbow had been keeping minutes all along. Mrs. Schwellenberg and the frogs, the coach window and the swollen eyes, the terrible Windsor nights, the chase by the lake at Kew, the fiddlers in the bathing machine, pages written for no eyes, read now for 200 years, quoted in every history of the age, including, tonight, this one. The diaries of Queen Charlotte's household were never meant to be read. They became immortal precisely because of it. Nobody writes the truth like somebody who is certain no one is looking. Mrs. Schwellenberg served on, fortress to the last, and died at St. James's in 1797, in harness, still first keeper of the robes, still loyal unto death to the girl who sang on the ship in 1761. Queen Charlotte outlived the century, outlived in every way that matters the man she sat up for through that November, for the shadow did come back for him in 1801, in 1804, and finally in 1810 for good, and the king ended his days old, blind and apart at Windsor. But those are nights from the far side of the door, and this channel has told that story on its own, from his side, as it deserved. She died in 1818 at Kew of all houses, in the very house of the chalked doors and the coldest winter, in her chair with her children by her. And Mrs. Delaney's 1,000 paper flowers lie safe in the British Museum to this day, dated and named, exactly as promised, paper keeping what fingers could not hold. And Anne Fletcher of King's Lynn, and her 2 books in a basket lining, what became of her? Nothing became of her. That is the honest answer, and I promised you honesty. She is the stitched-together girl, remember? Borrowed eyes, made of all the wardrobe maids whose names no wage book bothered to keep, and history closed over every one of them the way the sea closes over a footprint at Weymouth. No publisher came for their linings, no 7 volumes. Whatever they kept, and girls like her did keep things. Scraps of them surface even now, 6-penny books in attic trunks, laundry lists with prayers in the margins, a life in 51-word Tuesdays. Whatever they kept was burned, or damp rotted, or used to line a pie dish by a granddaughter who couldn't read the small crossed hand. That is what happened to the Maids' diaries, almost every one that ever existed. This story has been, among other things, their 7 volumes. You've just spent one night reading a book that never survived, over the shoulder of a girl who never quite existed, in rooms that absolutely did, in the very worst and very sweetest months they ever held. That is what this channel is for. Somebody has to be the lining. One more thing, and then we will let the sea have the rest of the night. It is July of 1789, and the court is at Weymouth, bathing to fiddle music, and across 70 miles of water, in Paris. In that same July, a crowd is battering its way into a royal fortress called the Bastille, and the world that made everything you have watched tonight, the chains of hands, the holy persons, the backing out of rooms, has begun that very week to end. No whisper of it will trouble the sands for days, and when it comes it will sound at first like foreign weather. It is not foreign weather. It is the future. The listener knows. The court plays on, and there is a mercy in that too, the same mercy as ever. Nobody has to carry tomorrow tonight. Not them, not you. So come back down to the attic over the sea, one last time, and let the day put itself away. The linen is folded. The irons are cold and greased. The pin drawer is righted, the lavender is stoppered, the stub is in the tin. The new girl is asleep on Betty's side of the bed, breathing like the tide, and down the front the watch is calling something soft to another watchman, and the water goes on doing the oldest work there is, in and out, patient as Mrs. Moss with a hem. You have what you have, and tonight it is enough. You are warm enough, fed enough, safe enough. You have a bed and a tin with one stub in it, and a book nobody will ever read, which is to say, a self. That is more than most of the sleeping world can count tonight. That is enough. Tomorrow there will be linen. Tomorrow there will be bells and sand in the hems, and the Queen's cuffs freckled brown, and the chain of hands link by link by link. Tomorrow the machine will want you at 6. But that's tomorrow. Tonight has no more errands in it. Right now there is only the bed, and the tide, and the warm dark coming up the stairs of the house like a kindness. The same as last night. The same as Windsor. The same as every night of the 3 years you have lived inside this story, and all the years stretching out beyond it, sea after sea of them, breathing in and out. Let the sounds sort themselves and sink. The water on the shingle, the wall, and behind the wall, faint and dry and everlasting, a pen scratching down its one stubborn copy of the truth. Let even that fade. She will finish the page without you. Centuries will pass. The Weymouth machines will rot to staves, and the Queen's Lodge itself will come down, stone by brick, and the frogs and the pin-draws and the whole solemn chain of warmed linen will shrink to a few lines in books like hers. Strangers will walk the long walk under new trees. The castle will still be there. It is the kind of thing that stays. And tourists will file past the round tower with their mouths open, and not 1 in 10,000 will look up at the attic windows. But people will still lie awake at night listening to a house settle around them, still keep small books they show no one, in drawers, in linings, under floors of one kind or another, still write down the day because the day would otherwise vanish, and sign it to nobody, and feel better, and never fully know why. Some things don't change. The keeping doesn't change. The wall, and the pen on the other side of it, and the comfort of not being the only one. That doesn't change. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way it took a wardrobe maid in an attic over Weymouth Sands in the summer of 1789, mid-thought, mid-tide, with the lavender still on her hands. Let the world fade. Let the noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow and soften and finally stop like a pen lifted at the end of a page. The page is full. The stitches are closed. The thimble is where a thimble would be. You've earned this rest. Take it and dream of whatever dreams may come. Good night.